Hi, everyone. I'm Yvette Dakota. This is the Original Self podcast, Lessons from Behind the Chair. The styling chair was my first classroom. For almost 40 years, I've been a hairstylist. And I've come to believe that the salon is one of the best places to study human behavior. You see people at their happiest, they're most vulnerable, and sometimes under an incredible amount of pressure. And if there's one thing that I've noticed that is that we have a way of revealing strategies and patterns to protect ourselves when we feel stressed out. Which brings me to a story that I want to tell you about a wedding party that I did in the salon. And by the time they left, I was calling them the Jurassic Park wedding party. And before you think that I nickname every single person that comes in the salon, I don't. I haven't done it for all the 40 years. So, side note, I started my career doing makeup and then I was specializing in wedding makeup and all along doing hair, but then I added bridal hair as well. It truly was one of my favorite parts of my job because it was like a different kind of energy that you got to be a part of. That, music was playing, bridesmaids laughing, somebody spilling their mimosa, whatever. And the bride, like, you would see her laughing and then kind of tearing up if somebody said something sweet or her mother came in or whatever. And it was just fun to be a part of that, right? So most wedding mornings did go just like that. This wedding party was very different. And when I think about it now, it kind of started during the consultation for the bride and the trial run. So the soon to be bride was going to come to my salon 2 weeks before the actual wedding date to, discuss what she wanted and then like try out different styles and do the makeup, see what she liked. And she had this name that was not phonetically spelled. I'd never seen the name before, and it was very difficult for me to pronounce. And I just kept trying to say it over and over in my head so that I didn't forget it and that I didn't mispronounce it. And here's a little foreshadowing. I absolutely mispronounced it and absolutely forgot it several times, okay, during the wedding day. But in the trial, she had this very natural, kind of crunchy, earthy feeling about her. Like her energy was very mellow. She was no fuss, no drama. She seemed genuinely relaxed and easy to be around. And everything she described bottled down to one word: natural. That's all she wanted. Her entire concept of how she wanted to look, how her wedding was being laid out, natural. She wanted her hair down in soft, flowing curls, which kind of concerned me because she had very fine hair. And fine hair has a way of dropping curls out, like if you're me, in about 30 minutes. But for a lot of people, it's not going to last the entire day into night for the wedding day. So we talked about that a little bit. And then for her makeup, she wanted to, look like she wasn't wearing anything, wanted to look like herself, but just a little bit more polished. So the problem with that is that the camera has a way of completely washing you out. And so I explained this. I explained that you need to wear like a little bit more makeup than you normally do for it to look very natural in the pictures. I had a feeling that she didn't wear makeup at all. She came in with no makeup, but she also was doing a trial. But I just got the feeling that she wasn't a big makeup wearer. So we discussed it. She understood it. And I said to her, like, okay, let's just do it. And then you tell me, oh, that's too much. Or I tell you, oh, you need more blush. Whatever. We're going to figure this out. So, the trial went very well. I did several hairstyles on her. We worked out the makeup. I took pictures. I took copious amounts of notes so that I could recreate what she really, really liked on the day of her wedding. Fine, no problem. In theory, this should have all worked like clockwork. I also explained to her that her bridesmaids uh, needed to come in with clean, dry, and a little bit of styling products in their hair. And I was going to do three of the bridesmaids, including the maid of honor. And then another stylist in the salon was going to do two of the other bridesmaids. She completely understood. Everything was great. We knew the time that she was coming. We were a little bit, very, not a little bit, we were a lot of bit conscious of the time frame because she didn't allow a lot of time for all of this to get done. But because I'd done so many weddings, it's like, okay, we got this. No pressure at all. So 2 weeks later, the wedding day arrived. I got to the salon about an hour early. I set up a little goodie bar of like bagels, schmears, croissants, orange juice, champagne for mimosas, water, coffee, the whole shebang. Okay. And I got all my stuff set up. I was super ready, organized, like always. The other stylist came in. She was completely organized and ready to go. Okay. So about 30 minutes after the scheduled arrival time and two phone calls later, the wedding party walks in. No sorries, no, oh, please excuse us, none of that. So somewhere in my head, I heard David Attenborough, uh, very quietly beginning to narrate, clearing his throat. At the time, I seriously thought I was just going to style a wedding party. I had no idea that I was about to watch four completely different stress responses just just unfold in front of me, including my own. The first bridesmaid came over to sit down in my chair and I looked at her hair and it was soaking wet. And I mean dripping. Like she just walked out of the shower and then uh, somehow transported herself to my salon. I've never seen anything like this. Just dripping, dripping, dripping. And I just kept blinking, like just what is happening here, right? Because I knew that I had been very clear with the bride about how the bridesmaids needed to arrive. But then, like I said, I heard the narration of Attenborough saying like emerging from the moist undergrowth, the damp raptor appears, seeking assistance in transforming her saturated curls into a smooth chignon. A chignon is like a low bun, like at the nape of the head, like think ballerina. Her hair was super curly, very frizzy. And I thought, okay, let's just do this, right? So I'm already 30 minutes behind. I have to blow dry her hair, smooth her hair, and then do the chignon. When I think back now, I think coaching has taught me something that I did not understand then. When someone violates our expectations, our brains almost instantly start explaining who they are instead of maybe wondering what happened. While she might be operating from a completely different set of expectations. We tell ourselves, or I told myself, that she's irresponsible, she didn't care, and she's inconsiderate. Maybe those things were true. Maybe they weren't. What I now know is that judgment closes down the conversation, and I had a lot of it. If I had just shown some curiosity and asked her some questions, maybe that misunderstanding would have just like, kind of tamped down my judgment. But as it turned out, the damp raptor just truly reminded me that we respond differently under stress. So I finished her. I'm 30 minutes behind, and now here comes the second bridesmaid, who is the maid of honor. She sat down and everything looked okay. She looked like she had her hair was like up in a ponytail, but it looked curly. Uh, I removed the elastic band from her ponytail, and her hair exploded into this tangled, not like super oily, very, very dirty. Think Bob Marley on a humid day, almost. Not maybe not as much, but a lot. And I took a very slow, shallow breath because I'm very short and my hair, my nose is always in the hair. So I decided that okay, we're not going to chit chat about this. She said she wanted to wear it curly and just kind of piled up on top of her head. But it was so tangled that I needed to brush it a little bit and then maybe re-wet it a tiny bit just to get the curl to form. I took the brush and I started one brush, one pass through the tangled hair very gently. And all of a sudden, she pulled away from me, bent in half, like like just completely in half, like putting the car chair down, and put her face in her hands. And she was leaning so far forward that I couldn't reach her hair any longer. And so I said, whatever her name was, are you okay? And she didn't answer me. And so I asked her again, silence. So then I put my hand on her shoulder and I'm like, hey, what's going on? Are you all right? Nothing. Absolute silence. So at this point, I can't waste any more time. I don't know what's going on. She looks like she's crying. I can't hear anything. So I say, I can't remember the bride's name, of course, because now I'm under pressure. And so I just yelled out, bride, so that she would come over. And she did. And then she stooped down to the ground because that's how far forward this maid of honor was, and put her hand on her shoulder and said, hey, are you all right? And the maid of honor raised her head from her hands, completely dry eyes, no crying whatsoever, looked over at the bride and said, no, I'm fine. She just pulled my hair. I seriously, I just stood there for a second. And somewhere in the distance, I heard Attenborough clear his throat again, and he said, "The pterodactyl has entered the ecosystem." What's fascinating about this dino is that they have developed a survival strategy of emotional display with hardly any moisture. The bride looked at me with absolute reproach and she said, "Can you be more gentle?" Once again, my first reaction was absolute judgment. I was completely annoyed. Like, are you kidding me? I didn't even pull her hair, right? But of course, I said, Yes, sorry. I didn't mean to pull her hair. Yeah, I'll be more gentle." So I very gently gathered her gnarled hair and just pinned it up piece by piece on her head into what generously could be described as an up style. And I never used a comb, I never used a brush, and sent her back to the couch. And so now, because of that, I was only 15 minutes behind. So I thought, okay, I can make up this time. Thinking about her later on, I I realized something that I had sensed many times in bridal parties. I noticed this pattern that there always seemed to be one person in the wedding party whose behavior, whether intentional or not, pulled attention away from the bride. At the time, I would have called it jealousy. but it's most likely more complicated than that. I think in major life transitions, such as a wedding, it's not just the people getting married that are transitioning. I think relationships shift, like the wedding shifts relationships, the roles, the expectations, the person's sense of where they belong. Someone who's always been like the closest friend or the sister that everyone depended on, or just the one that felt the most important in the bride's life, suddenly finds themselves in a different place. That shift can stir up emotions. I think emotions that none of the people involved fully understand. So was that what was happening to her? I don't know. But years later, I realized as well that the bridesmaid or the maid of honor, she never answered me when I asked if she was okay. She only answered the bride. And another thing that stress does is it often turns the people that are stressed out, like their nervous system is experiencing like craziness, they turn towards whoever is the safest. What's happening in that moment? I don't know, but I think that they turn towards people who represent familiarity, comfort, or connection. So I don't think that moment was about the comb, because I swear to you, I didn't pull her hair. I think she needed something I couldn't give her. At the time, I thought I solved the problem, but now I realize I only solved the hairstyle, right? So the last bridesmaid's hair was clean, dry, and smooth. Yay. Okay. For a brief moment, I thought, all right, the universe has thrown me a lifeline. This is great. So I was smiling and I said to her, like, how would you like to wear your hair for today? Her lips were moving, but I didn't hear a single word, like, not at all. So I leaned in a little bit closer and I asked her again. Again, I heard nothing that she said. And somewhere in the distance, the narration returned, right? The Whisperosaurus moves cautiously along the perimeter of the park. Communication is attempted, though rarely detected by the human ear. Have you ever seen the movie Pitch Perfect? The first one? There's a girl that is the boom boxer in the what do you call it? The a cappella group. And you can't hear a word she says. And she says something super funny like, I ate my twin in the womb, in this like very soft whisper. This is what I thought of when this girl was trying to speak to me. And so finally, after really trying to hear her, I just use like my hairstylist sense and a lot of pantomiming and figured out kind of like what she wanted. Okay. Um, in retrospect, I think that stress also can make people very loud and excitable, but it can also make people shrink back and kind of become invisible. And I think that's what was happening here, right? So the Whisperosaurus reminded me that withdrawal is just as much of a stress response as yelling, crying, or screaming. Thankfully, she wasn't difficult, just extremely hard to hear. So, surviving the damp raptor, the pterodactyl, and the Whisperosaurus, and only being 15 minutes behind, that felt like a miracle. So, I quickly set up my makeup and recreated on the bride what we did at the trial. She seemed pleased by it. And the one thing though is I could tell that she was starting to get a little bit anxious, a little bit stressed out. She kept looking at her watch at the time and you know, it was coming up on the time. So I then began to curl her hair. And as I was curling the first few curls, she whipped her head around and asked me, "Why are you using a different curling iron? You didn't use that at the trial." And I explained to her that it was the second iron that I used when I explained to her that her curls were not going to stay in all day long. And like her entire demeanor changed, that calm, laid back, it was gone. She started questioning me and complaining that nothing was the same as the trial and going on and kind of like raising her voice, like just being rude. And so I stopped what I was doing and just said to her, "Okay, well, we can fix that." I said, I can show you the pictures, but we don't have a lot of time for that. So just tell me what's going on." And she said that she wanted the bigger iron. And I mean, I don't care. At that point, I'm going to do what she wants to do. But she was also on the phone and getting up and going over to the couch and getting something out of her bag and just making everything more stressful, making it take longer, getting closer and closer to the time when she needed to leave. And she kept asking me, "Oh, can I have some more champagne? Can I have some more champagne?" So finally, I refilled her glass with the new bottle and I just set it on the station. Like, "Here you go. Have as much as you want. I don't care." So I used a larger curling iron and I was just trying to do what she wanted me to do. And after spending almost 3 hours with this wedding party, I could feel my stress level becoming higher. It's a very normal response. And after she got up to do something one more time, I said to her, "Excuse me for 1 minute," because I felt like I was going to flip out on her. And I don't want to do that. That's not me. It's my salon. I have this whole wedding party. Like, there's a decorum. There's a level of professionalism that I don't want to cross that line. So I excused myself. I went to the back room and instead of throwing something, I just started breathing. And I was taking deep breaths in and very slowly and even slower breathing them out, right? To regulate my nervous system. And then I started like kind of naming things in my head that was in front of me, right? So these are all techniques to calm down the nervous system, right? And so eventually, after like a minute of doing that, I did start to feel calmer. And, I just went back out there and finished her up. She eventually liked everything, and then they finally left. But it made me think, like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, this is like the final straw, that wedding parties are becoming kind of impossible, and I don't like how I feel afterwards. I don't feel that happy. And I thought about this for weeks afterwards, and I thought about how different she seemed during her trial, and was questioning, like, were you really that easygoing? Were you really that laid back? Were you pretending? I don't think that anymore. I really don't. Psychology has taught me that we all carry an identity, a story about who we think ourselves to be. My story was simple. I was prepared, organized, I paid attention to every detail. I knew what I was doing. But when she questioned the curling iron, I believe my nervous system didn't hear a question about the tool I was using. That question was about my competence. And that's identity threat. In plain English, that's identity threat. Our identities often feel very stable until they're threatened. We all carry stories about who we are. Like, "Oh, I'm easygoing. I'm patient. I'm not controlling." I've never said that in my entire life. Most days, though, those stories fit. But I think stress has a way of testing whether those stories are descriptions of us or aspirations. Sometimes they're either or, sometimes they're both. I believe the bride wasn't only protecting her identity that morning. I think she was likely trying to protect the image that the perfect wedding that she had spent months planning and imagining. I think that became part of her image. And that's how our reactions become bigger than the moment itself. One of the biggest lessons I've learned, both behind the chair and through coaching, is that people usually make sense once you understand what they're trying to protect. Sometimes it's their role, sometimes it's their relationship, sometimes it's their confidence, sometimes it's just a sense of simply belonging. We may never know exactly what's happening inside another person, but we can choose to become a little less certain and a little more curious. Maybe that's where our original self begins to show up, right? Uh, Not when everything's going according to plan, but when the plan falls apart. That's when we really see what's going on. I hope something in this episode resonates with you. And if you're interested in working with me, you can find all my information in this episode's notes. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time. I hope you have a wonderful day.